Good morning once again. I'm Heather Matthews here in McClellanville, South Carolina, and with me is Casey Watson. Casey, I think you have to, I think you're able to say good morning from Myrtle Beach. How was the weather up there this morning? Pretty tough down here.
Yeah, so we had, just like you, not far down the road, had some line of storms moving through, but I'm starting to see a little bit of sun through the clouds slightly, so hopefully it's clearing up for us here.
Right. Prayers for everybody in our state who is suffering right now from the storm on top of everything else. I've been watching Twitter, and I know a lot of different places are hit. And so I know we're resilient people and independent and we'll bounce back. But again, just like with the virus, it's going to take all of us. So this is our second coaching session for the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce and all its members, and anybody else really who wants to join. And like last week, I thought we would start with a couple of best practices, though we're going to flip the table on that and do what not to do. And then we'll go through our to-do list and talk about jump-starting a crisis communications plan if you don't already have one. So beginning with a couple of things not to do. Last week, we mentioned how it's great to leverage social media right now. People are bored and at home and they're looking for content, but not to focus on self and not to be salesy. And so, I mean, it wasn't 30 minutes after our coaching session last week that my newsfeed started to blow up with people complaining about a funeral home that was cold calling people and saying, you know, have you planned for your funeral? This is not the time for that. And so they were just blasted on social media. And I thought, you know, is it true that that's on everybody's mind? Yes. We have a client that makes cadaver carts and they are very busy right now. That is fact. But cold calling and asking people if they've planned as if doom is on the doorstep for them is going to backfire, and it did. The second thing that I saw that you do not want to do is an insurance company. I think I saw this on LinkedIn. They put up an image of Hurricane Hugo. And for, you know, those residents who were around during that time, that was a very difficult time in the state. And so the insurance company, and the caption was, I wrote it down, catastrophe season 2020 is coming. And I thought to myself, number one, it feels like it's here. But number two, I can't even wrap my mind around that yet. And that's September. So just help me get through April and to where I feel like May, and we're maybe going to be able to start emerging from this. I don't want to go down the road to September to doomsday. And, you know, it was just tempting to reach out and just try to graciously say behind the scenes, hey, like, have you thought about that? And then I thought, no, you know, it is what it is. It's out there. But again, salesy and focusing on self, trying to use a scare tactic to motivate people right now is just not the time. Instead, it's encouragement, all hands on deck. I miss you. We can't wait for you to return. Here's what we're doing to prepare for your return. All of those type of messages, just as simple as they can be, will help your brand, your organization, yourself connect with other people and make a positive impact. So again, no sales and no focusing on self during this time. So we are going to start sharing our screen, and we are going to start going through today's presentation. And I want to remind you that there is a little hand down at the bottom of the toolbar. And if you have a question, so just raise it, or in the chat bar, ask a question. And Casey Watson, who's on with me, is my backup. And she's going to be watching that to make sure that you don't overlook anything. But we'll stop and we'll answer your questions. Or if you've seen something like what I just talked about that we could use as an example of what not to do or what to do, you just stop us. I don't want to hog the microphone, so to speak. Okay, our to-do list every week is really focused on 4 things. reaching in, reaching out, retooling, and reinforcing by giving back. And when we say reach in and reach out, we're talking about key stakeholders, um, influencers in your organization or your community. And last week I challenged you to reach out directly to 3 key stakeholders. And this week, I want you to make it 3 more. So you should have 6 people on your list by Friday that you have reached out to and just said, hey, how you doing? Especially now with the tornadoes and the storms ripped across the state. I was supposed to be on with a lawyer this morning, and he sent me a snapshot of a tree on his car and his house. And so, okay, the work set aside, glad you're okay. So speak from the heart. I may encourage you to think about a forward-looking message now. We're ready for you to be back. We miss you. I'm preparing for you. I'm going to vacuum my house for once. Those type of things. And I want you to, again, keep that running list, because it will help you down the road to log with whom you're interacting and the feedback that you're getting. Because, for instance, if I were to write down the lawyer whose house had the car in the tree, well, next week it might trigger my memory to say, oh, I need to check in with him and to see how that's going. Again, as Mark Twain said, kindness is the language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Now is a time to be kind. Reach in. Reach out. We talked about getting outside of your comfort zone and connecting. And we talked about doing that via video, social media, maybe hosting a Zoom call. Well, I saw this great little example. I've actually been following it, and I'll tell you how my dad caught up with that. So look to your left, on the left-hand side of the screen, you're gonna see this is the Twitter account for the National Cowboy Museum. Now, I'm from Kansas, so I actually knew what that was, but it caught my attention. I wasn't following it on Twitter until I saw an article about it. And what happened is they furloughed everybody except the security guard, and they left him in charge of the social media account. And it has been a riot because he is my age or older. And so look at his post. He says, should I? LOL. And that's, every time I go into a manufacturing site, I think the same thing, like, I want to ride that thing up. But notice what he does. # hashtag the cowboy. It has been a riot to watch him learn social media. He will post things like, they say I need to add a hashtag. So he literally wrote the word hashtag. And then like a couple tweets later, he says, oh, it's supposed to have a #. He just added a # before hashtag. Bless him. And then the post below it from April 10th, he just tells a joke, right? Here's a joke. What do you call a happy cowboy? A jolly rancher. I mean, the guy's funny. And so look to your right. There's a screen clipping. This is of the Wall Street Journal, March 31st. And at the very top, you'll see handwritten, Heather, do you remember when we went here? My father in Kansas, reading the Wall Street Journal, clips the article, mails it to me, right? Because it is hilarious. And the guy has gotten over 300,000 followers. There's no way the National Cowboy Museum had that before this crisis. And then below, you'll see the arrow pointing to CNN. It's gotten all kinds of media coverage, Wall Street Journal, CNN. He went outside of his comfort zone, clearly, to take up the social media accounts, and they have been blessed by it. And Casey, I know you with your studies, getting your master's degree, we've chatted some about the impact of social media, and it's not just fun and games that people are looking to social media for anymore, is it?
No, so what we're seeing, the Pew Research Center actually did a study back in 2019, and they saw that 55% of United States adults are now looking to social media for all news. And then they saw that's an 8% increase, but there was a study that came out where they're starting to compare what adults are now looking at during the coronavirus, because this is unprecedented times. And they're predicting that after this, the new norm surrounding social media and news is going to completely change, because we've had to change in how we're giving our news. And they think that that number is just going to go higher and higher moving forward, since we are all looking to social media now for whether it's the Cowboy Museum looking for something good or looking for something from the Myrtle Beach Chamber on how businesses should be reacting or how businesses should be interacting with their customers or their clientele. And so something they're really seeing though is that these new roles of social media has become a habit for adults. And I think that this shows that it's very important for all businesses to use this to their advantage, to continue to control the narrative, to get the information that they want out before it gets into the 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. news, where you can't control that headline. The news controls the headline. So maybe if you have an interview with a news reporter, I remember several times I would, and the people we were interviewing would actually record the interview themselves on their phone, and then they would put that up there because they didn't want just the 3-second clip that I put on the air. They wanted the full story out there. And so there are so many ways I feel like you can now use social media to the advantage of your organization, because we're seeing this continue to grow in our day-to-day lives.
That's great, Casey. That's a really innovative idea too, to record the interview and post the whole thing. It's not too long. Think for each of us on this or watching this later, think about during this crisis, how much TV are you watching? Mm-hmm. The TV behind me has been dark like this, except late at night we'll watch something on Netflix, but otherwise we don't have it on. We're on social media. We're really not even on websites. It's social media. Now, so the Cowboy Museum, that's cool and all, but you don't have to have a platform like this or have something magnificent start to make a difference. This next example is a nun with a blessing on Facebook. Now, this is Sister Judith Ann Karam with a blessing for South Carolina. She is physically in Cleveland, but she did what she could. And I thought, isn't that wonderful? I know her, and she's a business savvy woman, but she is not on social media probably, like we are. But she could provide a blessing from her heart, and she did it. And I thought, that's what we're talking about. Just whatever skill set you have, share it. Mm-hmm. Start something. Start a conversation, wish people well, whatever you can do. That's reaching out, getting outside of your comfort zone to do something you normally wouldn't do. Again, it could be a Zoom meeting from all the businesses in your neighborhood. It could be a video effort. But to Casey's point, let's try to leverage social media right now. It's free, relatively, and people are on it. Retooling. This is a time for innovation. It's not a time to hunker down. So you need to, yes, consider how you're going to adapt to the new normal, but I want you to brainstorm with your team about some ideas that you might do. What might be better about your organization? To take an online course, to look for new partnerships. Your peer might be compromised as well, but together you may be stronger. And then to pick up what you're putting off, for most of us, it's our website. I just texted a teammate this morning and asked her, did the new part of our website go live late last week? Because now is the time to be doing things like that. And so we told you last week about one new effort that we have deployed, and that is the Buzz with Burnie. It is a new economic development podcast we launched last Wednesday. And Burnie is a 2-time director of the Department of Revenue, and he and Kara Gormley on our team, she's a journalist, interviewed Lou Kennedy from Nephron and a host of other people to launch this podcast. Every Wednesday, a new interview will come out. This coming week, it is the current and incoming presidents of SCEDA, which that stands for the South Carolina Economic Developers Association. And they are going to talk about, or they do talk about, what do we need to do now to be able to continue on with economic development in the future. What I want you to look at in the upper right-hand corner, the 2 arrows are pointing at it. This is the engagement just from on one platform in less than a week, because this thing launched on Wednesday. And so we reached almost 3,000 people, and we had 800 engagements. again, just from one platform, trying something new. And, you know, nobody's really, you know, the guru of social media, because it's always changing and we're always learning. This is someplace where learning never ends. But to me, it testifies that people are online and they're interested. And we'll see, our podcasts are videoed as well, because we know people are actually watching, not necessarily listening. So we'll see what week 2 has for us, but think about how you can retool. What can you try and do? Nestle Waters, here's an example. Now, a lot of companies that we've seen switch to making face masks or something else, they had the bandwidth to be able to do it because their products that they were selling right now aren't really being purchased. That's not the case with Nestle Water. Nestle Water's making more water than ever. It's like summer on steroids for them, because everybody wants bottled water like they want toilet paper. However, they paused their operations to provide bottles for hand sanitizer. So you can see this is out west. They have facilities all around the United States. In Arrowhead here, it's Deer Park, and Nestle Pure Life are the brands. Out west more, Midwest, it's Arrowhead. But it says we made and donated over 50,000 bottles today for this purpose of hand sanitizer. And so they did what they could. Now, they really could have bottled that water, sold it, and made money. But it's just not the time for self in sales 100%. And so I'm thankful that companies like that are willing to do what they can, even if now is a time where they could be making money. The same that goes for Nephron Pharmaceuticals. In the Buzz with Burnie, when we interviewed Lou Kennedy, the CEO, she said, we're making hand sanitizer as well. Now, they make one of the drugs that helps you recover from COVID-19. But they are almost hand making the sanitizer. They have a whole line set up doing this because it's the right thing to do. So, you know, I don't know, if you're dry cleaners and businesses drying up, you know, what else could you do that you could make a difference? That's retooling. Reinforcing by giving back. There's just so much that needs to be done. A lot of it is with the basic necessities of life. That's food and water for people who can't make their rent, car payment, etc. I saw a post from a food bank, I think it was in San Antonio. They serve 10,000 people. The Low Country Food Bank, Harvest Hope Food Bank, other food banks around our state are feeling the same pressure. So whether it's that or something else, give of yourself now. You will be blessed by it more than you know. Okay, so that's reaching in, reaching out, retooling, and reinforcing by giving back. We're now going to talk about jump-starting a crisis communications plan. It's likely you and many of your organizations went into this without one. That's not the case for the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. And I know that only because we were blessed to be able to help them last year retool theirs. They had one, we just helped retool it. But before this really was on anyone's radar screen, the chamber got together one night after work and talked through their plan, and deploying it missed what they saw coming. And bravo to them for doing that. And so, you know, if you know many of the people who work at the chamber, they can also give you suggestions on how to do it. But what I thought would be helpful today for the rest of our time together would be just to chat about how to jumpstart one. And I'm going at this at a very high level. So know that there's a lot to this, and that, you know, bringing someone in to help you once you get maybe something together might make it, well, it would make it better, and probably it cost you some money, but it would make it a lot better and help things. So let's talk about why having a formal and efficient, effective approach is beneficial. And that's what a crisis plan is. It sets out how are we going to respond if something bad happens. Let's say you work at an airport and, you know, a disaster happens. You want everyone to know what to do and to have practiced that. And so what it does for businesses and organizations is a crisis plan will protect and enhance your business interests, because you will be responding as you've practiced, and you won't be making mistakes along the way or failing to respond. A crisis plan is going to provide you a principled and consistent response. It won't be doing it one way today and another day tomorrow. Again, with the tornadoes that hit today, you want the first responders to know what to do and how to do it. And the same goes with your organization and your business. A formal and efficient and effective approach also mitigates the risk or the depth of future potential problems. So mitigating the risk would be, I want you to think about what are the risks with your organization. Maybe if you're a trucking company, you can think about what would happen if we had a truck driver involved in a fatal accident. How would we respond? And having a good plan will help you respond in such a way that it can help you mitigate the risk, because you can see, oh, we need to better teach our truck drivers this, because there's more construction now, I'm making this up, than ever, and how to navigate that or how to find the resources for that online. All sorts of ways it can mitigate risk. And then it can maintain and potentially enhance your reputation. When you handle things right, well, in good order, it gives people confidence in your organization. And so it can not for sure maintain your brand, but it can also enhance it. Now think about organizations that you've seen where they haven't handled things so well. When we do crisis training, we talk about, there was during the BP oil spill, BP fired its CEO because his response was so out of touch with what happened. He lived in a different stratosphere than the people impacted along the coast, and he failed to consider the messaging that was coming forth and how to respond, and it set them back. But to their credit, they knew they had a problem and they stepped forward. So what are some steps that you need to take if you wanted to jumpstart a crisis plan? First thing is, you need to think about who's going to be your core crisis response team. Who's going to make that up? That could be, your C-suite, as you may say it, your business owner, your CEO, your CFO, your comms person, if you have one. If you're a small organization, it's going to be 2 or 3 people. You probably have an outside lawyer. I would say put him or her on the team, because you want to be able to call that person and say, we're enacting our crisis plan, which is exactly what the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce did. They said, we are enacting our plan. It has different levels of crisis outlined in it. And so when I came to help them that night, early in March, we were at level 1, but we have advanced, obviously. So you're going to think about the who. This does not need to be a big team. This needs to be the core people who can sit around a table and can make some tough decisions. You're going to assign responsibilities, and you'll see on the next slide what some of those may be. You're going to think about, what are people's core skill sets? What are their gifts? Not really, yes, take into account what their jobs are, but also what are their gifts as an individual that could help you get through the crisis. You're going to consider the existing risks. Here along the coast, we talk about hurricanes. We talk about water quality issues when there's a rainstorm and there's runoff. We talk about traffic. And then I want you to practice the 7 steps I'm about to show you. So again, what are you going to do? You're going to think about who's going to be on my team the next time something happens. You're going to assign responsibilities, and some of them will be, explained in these 7 steps. But I want you to also think through, what are the existing risks? If you're an electric cooperative, you have people working around power, and there's around people, and it's around storm damage. And so there are a lot of risks there, but there are risks, obviously, for all of us that are seen and unseen, but to think through for your organization. And then to practice the 7 steps. So what are the 7 steps? When a crisis hits and you're organized, You're going to first notify the crisis response team. You're going to get your core group together. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to think through how you're going to do that. I would suggest that you have everybody's text or cell phone number to be able to text them, to be able to call them, to be able to email them. And if somebody is going on vacation, this is serious enough that you need to have a backup person if their role is critical. You're going to be constantly gathering and assessing information, because once you pull the facts together, and much of this is happening at the same time, but you're going to pull facts together and you're going to determine, is this let's use just hurricane to make it simple. Is this a category 1 storm or is this a category 5 storm? And that might change over days. So this crisis response team is going to be continually meeting and talking. You're going to determine immediate term actions. Some of those actions will be telling your employees, we call them key stakeholders, your board, if you have one, maybe some government regulators, your mayor. It's going to be getting information out, but it also might be remedial action to try and mitigate some of the problem that's emerging. You're going to manage media activity, and you might be laughing, how do we do that? Well, that's through monitoring, heavy monitoring. So whoever this person is on your team, or probably I would suggest this too, people on your team managing the media, social and traditional media, they're going to be monitoring all the time. They're going to be glued to their computer and their phones and watching multiple platforms and updating you on the rumors or discussions, narratives that are happening online, so you can address them if needed, or quite frankly, so you can learn something that you might not know what's going on. You're going to be developing messaging. What do we say? How do we say it? Aaron Sanders, who works with me, we often say that the court of public opinion can kill you quicker than the legal court. So what you say and how you say it is important. And we like to work with a lawyer in that, because we do need to look for long-term for litigation risk. But you know what? Sometimes you just need to say now, well, this was not our intention. And I believe it's okay to say, I'm sorry. I think down the road, a jury may ask, why didn't you just say you were sorry for something clearly was your company's fault? You can see then notifying stakeholders. You're going to widen the net to tell people what's happening and what you're doing, and then you're going to monitor and adjust. The messaging is important. I think Casey had a couple of points to say about this. Ooh, Casey, we got just a couple more minutes, so if you would share some about messaging and why that's so critical at a crisis.
Yeah, so I feel like, and Heather has kind of taught me this during my time with NPS, is it's really important that everyone who is speaking on behalf of the organization, no matter where it is, if it's on social media or on live TV, that you have a clear, defined message, that you're all saying the same thing, and you're portraying that, we are in line. We may be up in source about how to handle something, but don't let that get across to the media or to the public. You want to make it seem as if you all agree with this picture, you all agree with what you're doing, and that you're all working together. And it's okay if you don't have the exact answer now, but you're working towards it. And I think just having that clear line of communication, that feel of transparency, and something that I've learned recently is that, if it's a crisis situation, you may not have any new information from the day before, or whenever you did your last press release. Just getting out there and saying, hey, this is where we are. We're still where we were yesterday, but you're at least controlling that, where assumptions can't begin to occur. And so I think messaging is just so important. And then, as Heather has said so many times to me, is the people who are retooling right now, the people who are conforming and crafting new messages during this COVID-19, these are the organizations and the people that are going to come out stronger on the end. And I think that that's exactly what we're all doing right now on this Zoom meeting. And that's really important, that you control your messaging and you're retooling and saying, what can we learn from this and do better going forward?
Right. Casey, thank you so much, dear. Again, next week, same time, same place, 10:30, we're going to do this again. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can email them to casey@npstrat.com and we will answer them. I told the company that owns us, I said, hey, I'm giving away a lot of our services, but I think it's the right thing to do. So we'll give you our honest answer. You can ask us and don't worry that you're going to have to pay us per hour or something like that. We don't have a lot of time left for questions, but if there are any questions in the Q&A, we'd be happy to take them now or later. I am going to stop sharing so they can see you and me, Casey, I think. But I'm thankful that you joined us today or that you took time to watch this. We hope it's helpful. We're all trying to get better, and I know we can. So I just run with endurance because I believe May, we're going to start to see that finish line, and we all know the burst of energy that we get when we see that. It's just we need to pull together for the next couple of weeks. And so with that, I hope you have a great week. We look forward to seeing you next week.